Hi everybody, it's Beth, back again with another project share of a 12 by 12 inch paper pad kill. I had made it my goal at the beginning of the year to try and do at least one pad kill a month because I realized I had so much pattern paper that I loved and was hoarding and just never using it. So I made it a goal to do these projects once a month because not only does it help me, but then I also wanted to share the videos because I know in the past I've struggled to find ways up to use different ways to use up the paper. Like you can make cards, you can do scrapbooks, but what else can you do with it? So I'm trying to give you several ideas in one place to kind of help you use up your paper if you've become a hoarder like myself. This particular project came into play because I was recently moving my craft room from one room to another and had to move my paper storage, which was very eye-opening. I knew I had a lot of paper, but this just really brought it to light how much I had. And I panicked when I didn't think all of my paper was going to fit in its new home. I have a lot of loose pattern paper as well as the paper packs, and the loose paper just wasn't going to fit. And so in a panic, I went through and pulled out different papers that I could try and use quickly. And this is actually, the paper that you see in front of you it's all from one pad, and it's a pad that I had torn down a long time ago, and I used to tear down my pads and store them by color or theme. That's just how I worked back then, rather than necessarily by brand. I did a lot of smaller projects and just needed it by color, so it was easier to see all of my colors, the patterns of the same color in one place. So anyway, I can't even tell you who this pad is by. It's probably been at least 5 years that I've had it, maybe even longer, I'm ashamed to say. It's very masculine, so it's been hard for me to use in the past, but I decided that it would be great use for Cards for Soldiers. If any of you haven't heard me talk about Cards for Soldiers yet, or if you're new to my videos, Cards for Soldiers is an organization basically run by one awesome woman, and they send handmade greeting cards to soldiers that are overseas, and it allows those soldiers then to write in them and send them to their loved ones. There are many soldiers that are on bases that are very remote or in hostile areas, and they can't get out to necessarily, if they don't have a store on base, they can't necessarily get out to buy cards for birthdays or weddings or things like that to send home. And there are many that are so remote they don't have great phone or internet service, so they can't even communicate that way. So written communication is like the best form of communication. So this just gives them a really nice way to communicate home. So along with the cards, they also send care packages with like goodies in them, be it books or bookmarks or toothbrushes, hard candy, activity books, different things that they can do, especially for those remote bases that don't have a lot of amenities. So it's a great program, and I've tried to kind of make my focus of each paper pad, to go towards the Cards for Soldiers program. So they're always looking for masculine card or masculine themed items because most of the cards they get tend to have more of a feminine feel, and so they do send cards to other men, dads, brothers, sons, or whatever. So we try to make sure that we get some masculine cards peppered in there as well. And I wanted to get some masculine bookmarks because, again, some of the ones I've made in the past have been more feminine because I have a lot of pink and girly and frilly papers. So this was my chance to have a masculine focus on my project. So like I said, I was in a panic and I was trying to figure out how I could use up this paper in the fastest way possible, and I decided that bookmarks was that way. So I focused on making as many bookmarks as I could, and then used the scraps that I had left to make the cards. And I also managed to get a couple other projects out of it as well. And I'm going to break this video down into two parts. The first will be kind of the overview of what I've done, what I've made, and then the second part will be more of a focus on cards, because I do have a lot of different ways that I used up the scraps on my cards and still managed to make a really nice card. So I would like to give a little more attention to those, and I don't want to make this video horribly long for you guys, so I will do the card focus in part 2. To start with some of the bigger projects that I did manage to get out of this, like I said, it was more of a masculine paper, but I realized my niece's prom dress in this picture was like almost the same shade of blue, and I loved the white floral detail on it, so I managed to glam it up a little bit, with some flowers and some silver ribbon and some rhinestones, and make that, a pretty feminine page. And I actually made 2 of these, one for my daughter's album as well. And then another blue paper from this pack matched. I had these family stickers in my stash for a while and realized that the blue kind of tied into that really well, and so I was able to do kind of a family focus page. And then just some travel that we did. It kind of had this paper had an antique feel, so that worked out well. So I got about 6 12 by 12 scrapbook pages out of this pack. And then I also managed to do a mini album, and this is like a 5 by 7 size. And it's an accordion style album, so it has 2 chipboard covers, and then I don't know if you can see, the inside pages are actually attached and they kind of make an accordion fold. So what I did is I took some of this blue paper that had like this pretty brown floral, and you could really turn it whichever way you wanted, but I just made sure to I covered the whole album, and then folded the sides over, and then covered that with some of the solid brown that was in the pack, and then just attached one end of my accordion piece to the inside of each of the covers. And then I just decorated the pages, and it's nothing overly fancy, just used some die cuts that I had, and then some of the papers from the pack. And you can also turn it over. And there's no like real theme to this album. I didn't do any journaling. There's not even any pictures in it yet. Just thought it was a good multi-use type album. So then, like I said, my next big focus was bookmarks. I decided to I tried to find pick the non-girly, like the more masculine pages that had a good pattern to them and make them into my bookmarks. So I took all the 12 by 12 pages that I had and cut them down into 5-inch squares, and that left me with a 2 by 12-inch strip that I then used to make like your normal standard long skinny bookmark. And then it left me with a 2 by 10-inch strip, which I thought if I cut in half would be perfect for a mat on my cards. So like again, I will go into some more detail on those in part 2. But I focused on the bookmarks and then tried to use the scraps, make as many cards as I could with the scraps. In the past, when I've made a bookmark, I would cut the paper into a square. This is a 4 by 4-inch square. These were actually 5 by 5. Pick one, open it up, and you can see the difference in the size. I think you can do up to 6 by 6 inch as well. I've not done anything less than a 4 inch, just because once you get it all folded up, you want to make sure you have enough, like on this part, because it hooks over the book page like that, and so you want to make sure you have enough that's going to hang on to the page of your book. But in the past, I used a method where you have a square, you fold it in half one way and then in half the other way. So you have 2 score marks and 4 squares. You cut one square out completely, and then you go to the opposite corner and you cut half of that square off at a diagonal. So then once you would fold it up, you put your adhesive on, and then that half square is kind of what your book page would then hook on. And that's great. I loved this method, but it leaves me with a lot of square and triangular scraps, and I really didn't want to create any more scraps for myself than I needed to. So I scoured Pinterest and managed to find some other folks who had a version of these that required no cutting and no adhesive. Now, I did cheat and cut. On mine, I trimmed them up a little bit once I folded them to make it easier to fold. And there's a nice little graphic that somebody had shared on Pinterest, and I will try to link that below because I apologize, I don't remember who it was right now. So I will try to link that below because I'm sure it would be easier to follow that than it is my rambling. But in this case, you take your square and you fold it in half diagonally. So then you have a triangle. So you take the points of the triangle and fold them to the center point here at the bottom. So you're going to fold both of those in like you have a square. And so then you take those points again and you fold them in half towards the middle of the triangle. So you're kind of folding it into another little triangle on top on each side of the square. And then once you have your square, you're going to fold what's going to be like the inside of the bookmark. You want to fold it up to the top of the triangle. And then once you fold everything in, you're going to just slide these and hook them under, and voila, it all stays. And I will say, like, this was a medium weight paper, and these did start to get a little bulky once I folded them. And you can see this one I've played with quite a bit, so it's kind of rough around the edges. But that is why I trimmed them up a little bit, because it started to get bulky in here and it didn't want to stay tucked very well. So I did just trim the points off a little bit, narrowed them down a little bit so they would fit in and still stay tucked. And I loved this. It didn't require any adhesive. It didn't really require any cutting. And so I just cut everything down and like did mass cutting, mass folding, mass tucking. So I managed to make 60 of these corner bookmarks. So I could get 4 out of each 12 by 12 sheet. So that worked out pretty well. And then with the 12-inch strips that I had, the 2 by 12-inch strip, this is just the back of a paper pad. I've always saved the front and back of the pads for some reason, just in case I need chipboard. Unfortunately, the front of this pad is one that I don't have anymore. That would have been helpful, so I could have told you who the paper's by. But basically all I did is I took my 2 by 12-inch strip, took some wet glue, put it on the back of my paper, I just did a whole bunch of strips. I just covered one 12 by 12 piece of cardboard backing. I just covered it with all the strips I had could fit. And then once I put the glue on and laid them down, smoothed them out, I did some burnishing just to make sure I got out all the bubbles and so that it would, lay flat and smooth. And then once it was dry, I just took my cardboard sheet and just trimmed down back into my 2-inch strips and then trimmed them down into a 6-inch strip. And you could go thinner, you could go wider. This is just, I was trying to maximize my paper. So once I had them all cut out, I just rounded the corners, used a standard hole punch to punch my hole. And then this is just yarn. I managed to pick up a bunch of yarn at a garage sale for next to nothing a few years ago. And I don't knit or crochet. So I'm trying to find other crafty ways that I can use it up. Excuse me. You could also use ribbon, you could use baker's twine, embroidery floss, anything that you happen to have would work just fine. So I got 22 of these long skinny bookmarks. So in total I got 80 bookmarks, which I thought was awesome. I'm really excited to be able to send those off for Cards for Soldiers. And then just to kind of give you an overview again, I'm also managed to make 66 greeting cards. So also got a good number of cards. And once I'm done, once I finished all of my major projects, got all of my cards made, kind of evaluated what scraps I had left. And you have a bunch of little scraps, little pieces like this. So what I do is go back into my cards and then try and embellish the inside of the card with a strip or a banner or a star or a circle or something, just to give the inside a little bit of pizzazz. And so you can see that these pad had like the tear off strip at the top and it had a hole punched. And so I was also left with a lot of these strips as scraps. And so another example is you can just take that and just cut that down and lay it across the inside of your card. And it gives it just a little more fun on the inside. And they still have plenty of room to write their own message. So after I had made everything up and then gone back and decorated the inside of my cards with the scraps, this is really all I have left, are just these little pieces. And I'm I'm going to call it done, because after working with a full 12 by 12 paper pad, once you get down to that, I'm done. I'm calling it good. So again, I managed to, out of this 12 by 12 paper pad, I managed to get like 6 12 by 12 scrapbook paper pages done of my own, a mini album, a 5 by 7 mini album, over 80 bookmarks, and like over 60 cards. So a good donation going to Cards for Soldiers program, and then I got some of my own scrapbooking done. So I'm going to call it a win. And I got some of this paper out of my drawer and managed to use enough that it all fit in my new drawers. So win-win for everyone. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found some good uses for your 12 by 12 paper pads or your scraps. Like I said, these corner bookmarks or even these long skinny bookmarks, just go through and pull out. Everybody has a box of scraps or has scraps that, as a scrapbooker, you don't want to throw anything useful away. Great uses for it. Even if you can send them to Cards for Soldiers, you can, use them as kids' gifts. Like if you buy somebody a book for Christmas or their birthday, you can make a bookmark to fit in it. My kids go through bookmarks like crazy. Either they use them or they, get worn out. So I'm also always making stashes of bookmarks for my girls. And my girls like to give them to their friends as just little friendship gifts as well. So if you found this useful, please be sure to give me a thumbs up. And like I said, I'm trying to do one of these pad kills at least once per month. And so I hope to have many more videos coming your way. So if you'd like to see more ways to use up your scraps, then be sure to subscribe to my channel. Otherwise, I thank you guys so much for your time, and I hope you have a great day. And come back for part 2 if you want to see the details of the cards. Thanks.